Hello everyone. So today I'm going to be talking about something that just popped into my head honestly a couple of minutes ago. I was sitting here thinking of a new topic for a Let's Talk video when all of a sudden I remembered about those dumb games that I, and probably most of you too, played back in elementary school. You know, elementary school was a time when we were all young and innocent and immature and kind of stupid. And as a result, we did some things that were kind of silly and, not very cohesive. And I'm going to be talking about some of the ones that plagued my own elementary school a little bit today. So, first of all, now this, and again, I'm pretty sure that most of these, I wouldn't know for sure because I only ever went to one elementary school as a kid because my family never moved. But I would assume that most of these apply to the majority of elementary schools, or there might be like slight spins or variations on them at certain other schools, and maybe there are some that your elementary school had that I've never heard of, or there are some at mine that I'm about to say that you guys have never heard of. Anyways, so the first dumb game, quote unquote, that I wanted to talk about was when you say the word what. This was a really strange one. Basically, what you had to do was you had to get someone to say the word what, and then you would say to them 5 minutes to get rid of it, and then they would have to make someone else say it to pass it along. Kind of like, say, a cheese touch or some sort of tag game, except instead of touching the person, you have to get them to do a certain thing. This was a very strange game, and me being the kid that I was, I fell for it all the time. Like, I remember I would always try and train myself to say yes when someone would say something to me instead of what, but I could never do it. I would always delve back into old habits and get stuck with it. And it was so weird because, like, everybody was forced to play. Because I remember, like, I would always say to kids, like, I don't play those games. I don't want to play. And they're like, no, not participating isn't an option. You have to. Everybody's participating. And I was just like, that was so confusing. And that's how it was for every one of these games. Like, you say to them, like, I don't play these games, or I don't want to play. They're like, yeah, too bad. They're always just like, yeah, too bad. Everybody's playing unless you claim that you quit. And it's like, well, you couldn't have told me that ahead of time. But, of course, elementary school kids being as young as they are, it's not like they can really prioritize that sort of thing. So, and then I remember there was also, I think, the word why. That one was extremely short-lived, maybe only like a week, but there was also the word why. That one was also getting passed around. But again, thankfully that one died after only about a week. So there was that. And then there was also a more physical form of tagging where you just, like, tap the person on the shoulder and go, tag, you're it. And then you have to say, I quit, when you're not it, to, quote-unquote, leave the game. What the objective is of that, I don't even know. That one was really weird. And, it's like, oh, that person already quit, because, of course, there's no indicator to tell who did and did not quit. So it's... That one wasn't done too much at my school, but it was still done every once in a while, and it was just weird. And they even made a satire of that in the movie Dumb and Dumber, I remember, where Jim Carrey and Jeff Daniels are walking along the road and it's like, you're it. You're it. You're it, I quit. You're it, I double quit. You're it, triple quitsies. You're it, quadruple quitsies, no takebacks, or something like that, and they just went back and forth like that. And that's exactly how it was in elementary school. It was the strangest thing, So there was that. Then, of course, you get to the big one, and this one is probably the most popular and the most well-known by, like, adults and just the general public, is jinxing. This is when, you say a word or phrase at the same time as someone else, and the first person to say jinxes them, which means that they cannot talk. This one was always really strange, and again, me being the somewhat well, I wasn't, like, dumb in elementary school, but I was, like, slow-witted, kind of, like... I wasn't able to think on my feet very well as a little kid, so I would almost always end up losing this thing when I was the one who said something at the same time as someone else. So, again, you just say the same word or phrase as someone else, and I remember, at least at my school, if the people said jinx at the same time, then you could go up, like jinx, double jinx, triple jinx, quadruple jinx, quintuple jinx. And then there were all these other ones like personal jinx, peanut butter jinx, which I don't even know what any of those meant. And I have no idea what the order was. I don't know, maybe it was like, like a deck of cards where, you have jack, king, queen, and ace. But I have no idea if it's like, I have no idea of the order of that, unlike a deck of cards where I do know the order. So I'm sure the other kids knew, but I didn't participate in that enough to ever figure it out. And then the slight variation comes in with how you break the jinx. In some cases, and this is how it was at my elementary school, you just have to say their name once. You get somebody to say your name one time and the jinx is broken and you can talk again. However, other versions, such as my cousins at their school, they said at their school you had to say their name 3 times instead of just once. And that was a slight difference. And which one is the original, I'm not really sure, because I've seen I've seen both versions portrayed in multiple settings. For instance, there's an episode of Regular Show where Mordecai jinxes Rigby, and in that episode, it's the say the name 3 times rule. Another example would be there was an episode of Recess where Gus gets jinxed, and that episode followed the say your name 1 time rule. So there really is no consistency. I guess it just depends on which version you grew up with, and which one came first, who knows? I couldn't tell you. I mean, I want to say the 1 time rule, but that's just because that was the first one I knew about. Really, it could have been either, who knows? So, jinxing, passing around words, passing around tags, And of course, all of this kind of relates back to the idea of just like playing tag and like, almost like cooties, Like you don't want to get cooties, you don't want to be it. It kind of seems to relate back to that idea of just like passing something along that you don't want to pass along. It's just kind of a thing in elementary school that like all these kids like make up this weird image in their mind of like this thing that they don't want to be, and then it gets passed around either by having them do a certain action or by just tapping them on the shoulder or something to that effect, And it's just nobody ever wanted to be that. And then, on top of those dumb games, there were also just, like, small little things, and these aren't really games, for instance, but they're other things, that kids would sometimes do. Like, I would always play tag with my friends at recess, for instance, and, determining who was it was always a bit of a hard thing to figure out, because no one could agree on which method we should use to decide. Because, there was the 1, 2, 3, and then everyone shouts not it. Last person to shout not it is it. Or, you tap your nose or your ear or something like that to, do not it. Then, of course, there was the term old-fashioned not it, which is when the first person to say not it is it. That one I did actually learn eventually. And then, of course, you have the one where everybody puts their foot around in a circle, and then you tap on each person's shoe to either decide who's it or decide who's not it. My group would usually do it by elimination process. So, whoever's person you landed on when you were done saying the phrase was not it, you'd repeat the cycle until there was only one person left. And the one last remaining person was it. Simple as such. And I remember there was the classic bubblegum in a bubblegum in a dish, how many pieces do you wish? And then whoever it lands on gets to say a number, and then they count off that many numbers, and then whoever it lands on is not it. Of course, that one was a little bit rigged, You could, as long as you were good at math, like I was as a kid, all you needed to do was just count out how many shoes there were, and you could, set it up so you yourself could get knocked out of the running to become it, because again, nobody wanted to be it. Then, of course, there was the other one, Skunk in the Barnyard PU, he laid a big one on you, which that one obviously had no control over where it was going to land because there was no input from the people itself. And later on, that was the one that we more commonly used because I remember a bunch of kids kept complaining, because it was kind of unfair that people were able to rig the system. I never complained about bubblegum because, again, I was good at math as a kid, so I was always able to count out how many I needed so that I would get eliminated. But later on, that would end up being the only one that we used. So, yeah, that's just about all I wanted to say here. Just, a couple short little stories and things about, it's just it's just looking back on what we did when we were kids, sometimes you just question why, where it came from and why we did it. And that is definitely what I was questioning when thinking back on all these dumb little games and whatnot that we would play. Of course, like, you need a method to decide of who's going to be it in tag. That I understand. But, like, the other things, just like, where did that even come from? I don't even understand. I guess it's just kids are bored in school and they just come up with mindless ways to keep themselves entertained. That's probably what it is. Anyways, that's just about all I wanted to say, so if there's any dumb games that you played in elementary school that I didn't list here, sound off in the comments below, or if maybe you played a version of one of these games that I mentioned with slightly tweaked rules, you can also let me know down below. Well, that's all I have to say for now, so thank you all for watching, and I will see you in the next video.